Alright guys, welcome back to today's episode. Continuing the JavaScript course, we'll be looking at loops today. So you're probably thinking, what is a loop? What is the point in a loop? So let's get into it. So what exactly loops are in JavaScript? Imagine if you've got a list of items and you want to go through each item and you want to perform some sort of action. So you might think, okay, I'll write some code for each individual item, right? That's your normal thought that you might have. But actually what loops do is they help us automate that process by repeating the same logic multiple times. So essentially, you can have a list of items, the loop will automate going through the list of each item, and then it'll perform that action or bit of code that you want on each individual items. So you can see it as an automation, really. So what we'll do is we'll get started with for loops. So, to begin with for loops, first we have to declare for, and then we'll add space and then brackets. And the first thing we need to do is we need to initialize a variable. So let's do that. So let's do let I being our variable, and we'll set it equal to 0. Remember, in JavaScript, we do not set the type of the variable. Right, it just gets updated as and when we set something to that particular variable. We'll say that I, and here's our condition, is less than, let's say 5 in this case. And then we can say I++. And then in here, we want to, let's just say we want to console.log I as an example. Okay, so now that we've written that, let's just explain what's going on, right? So a for loop that we have on the screen here has 3 parts. The initialization, right, which is the let I is equal to 0, right? Then we have our condition that I, so 0, this number I here, cannot be less than 5, or should be less than 5, right? And then we have our increment, right? So we have here I++. Remember in the last episode, we looked at operators and how you can add 1 to the operator by using I++ rather than I is equal to I plus 1. So that is essentially what I++ does. And basically it will keep adding 1 to I after each iteration. So let's go ahead and run this file. And let's scroll up. As you can see in the console, first it prints out 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And then it starts with 0, obviously. Because it's 0, it'll start with that, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it stops at 4, because remember that I should be less than 5. And that, everyone, is the basics of for loops. What we're going to look at now, as you can see here on the screen, is while loops, right? So this loop continues as long as the condition inside the parentheses is true. So what we can do now is we'll just do a variable here, let count is equal to 0, okay? And now, to do a while loop, you'd write in while, and then brackets or parentheses, if you want to call it that, count is less than 5, right? And then we'll open this up, and then we'll console.log the count, and then we'll do count plus plus, just like we did I++, we're going to do count plus plus here now as well. So in this example, what we're doing is essentially the same thing as before, but what we're using is a while loop. So the loop will run as long as the count is less than 5. And inside the loop, we increment count by 1. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we run this file. And let's scroll up. Let's just clear. Here we go. So here we go, it starts off with 0 because count is 0, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we don't see any more output than that because count will become 5, then because it's 5, it is not less than 5 anymore, and so it will exit out of the loop. So that is how a while loop would work. Okay, so now we've got a do while loop, and it is what you'd expect. It is a while loop, but there's a little bit of a twist. The code inside of the loop will run at least once, right? Even if the condition is false. So minimum of 1 time. So let's get started then, shall we? So do let num is equal to 0. Then we'll start off with do, as you'd expect. Open up our curly brackets, and we'll do console.log num, and then we'll do num plus plus, just like we did before. And then here, just outside this curly bracket, we'll do while, open up our parentheses, and we'll do num is less than 5. Excellent. So here what will happen is that the loop will run as long as num is less than 5. But even if the condition is false initially, it will still run once, right? So let's run it like this. And as you can see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is printed out. But I'm going to go ahead and change this to 5. And we'll see how many times it runs now. Let's go ahead and run it. Right, ignoring that 4 that was from before, here we've got 5. So as you can see, it's pretty interesting, the fact that it only ran once, and then it exits it out because num is technically 5, so it's not less than 5, but do while means that it'll run at least once. So it did run once and returned 5. Alright, so now we're going to have a look at for of loops. Something that's going to be really, really useful here is looping through arrays. So what we've got here is we've got an array of colors, right? As you can already tell, red, green, and blue. And what we're going to write now is a for of loop, which will iterate over each element in the array and log it to the console. So without further ado, let's get started. So as usual, we'll say for, and then open up our brackets, and then we'll do const. We'll declare that variable, remember, we initialize. So we'll do color of colors, right? And the reason we do that is because our array is called colors. And now we'll just do console.log and then color, right? So we don't necessarily need to call this color. This is the first thing that you need to understand, right? It can be anything. But for this code block to make sense, we're going to just call it color of colors, right? So that basically means for each item here, each element will be noted as color, right? So let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what the output is. All right, so let's scroll up. So we have red, green, and blue. That's printed out, right? And that's exactly what we were expecting, okay? That from this array, we printed out each element, which we've denoted here as a variable called color. It's really, really cool, and it makes it so easy to iterate through an array to each element, and then you can do like more processing to it. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is for in loops, and it's going to be the last loop that we'll be looking at today, and it's great for iterating through properties of an object. So what I've already defined here is an object of a person. So, you know, you've got the name John, age 25, and obviously based in the city of New York. So if you wanted to do for in here, so we'll type in for, as we always do, then what we'll do is declare a variable, so const, and we'll just put in the key as the variable, and you do in, right? And then here we're going to do person. So person is the name of our object. We'll go ahead and open our curly braces here, and then we'll do console.log. And then if we wanted to print out particular variables in JavaScript, we use the backticks. Yeah, so we'll use these backticks here, and then we'll do a $, and then open up some curly braces. So we'll do key, and then we'll just do a colon here, and then we'll do another $sign here, and then open up those curly braces, and then we'll do person, alright, which is the name of our object, and then in square brackets we'll put in the key. Okay, so now that we've done that, we'll just go ahead and run the file and see what our output is. And as you can see in the console here, we've got name, and then we've got a colon, and then we've got John, which is the value. Then we've got age, 25, and city, New York, which is exactly how our person object is defined. So what we've done in this example is use the for in loop to loop through the keys of the person object and load both the key, which is on this left hand side, and the value, which is on our right hand side. Okay, so that covers loops for today. So when should you use each type of loop, right? So here's a quick guide for you. So you should use a for loop when you know how many times you want to iterate. And then for a while loop, when you know the number of iteration depends on a condition, then you should use a while loop. And then you can use a for of loop to loop through arrays, and for in, as we've just done, to loop through object properties. So hopefully that helps, and that is loops in JavaScript for today. Thank you very much for watching, and like and subscribe, and we've got more to the series coming soon.